Good morning. Welcome to Well Traveled Life with Jonathan and Jennifer. This morning, we're kind of sad. We're about to leave the town of Winchcombe in England, where we've been staying for, I guess, 2 nights, almost 2 days.
Yeah.
Parts of 2 days, parts of 3 days.
Actually, 3 days, yeah. Yeah, we're kind of on the western side of the Cotswolds in Gloucester.
Okay.
Broadway is your kind of nearest big city, if you will. But Winchcombe is a very medieval-feeling town to me.
Yeah, a lot of, what do we call that? What's that siding?
Half-timbered.
Half-timbered houses, probably, we're guessing, 16th century, thereabouts. Quite attractive.
Beautiful big church in the middle of town.
Nice walking. We've been walking at night, and just beautiful. Great restaurants here. I have to say, we went to an Indian restaurant here.
The Winchcombe Indian restaurant. It had the highest ratings of any restaurant in town, and that includes a Michelin star restaurant here.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
We actually got takeout. I was really tired the first night we got here and been driving, and we got takeout, and which was really good, but takeout in my mind is never quite as good as going there. And Jennifer said that it's quite an attractive place, and so we went back last night and had dinner, and wow, I'm tempted to, if we were going to be here a little longer, we'd go back there for lunch. It was that good. Really,
that's
really super good.
And great service, cool restaurant, and just very good food.
Not as good as Rupa's back home, but quite good. Anyway, we're on our way up to, there's a castle here on the, I think maybe the east side of town, I'm not sure, but we're going to drive out there and try
Sudeley
to look
Castle.
at it, take some pictures, maybe do some droning if it's possible. Yeah.
So we stayed at a really fabulous little bolt hole of a cottage. Tarb Cottage is the name of it.
Yeah, that's it, the red brick back there.
And if you would like to learn more about that cottage, we would love to have you watch our video all about Tarb Cottage in our Where to Stay channel.
Enjoy. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Winchcombe is a gem of a Cotswold town with lots to see and do. We'll do a bit of a walk around town. We'll also show you those restaurants we spoke about and take you to Sudeley Castle as well as Belas Knapp, which is one of the ancient burial grounds that you can see from a hike just outside of Winchcombe. Winchcombe is 13 miles from Burton on the Water, and it is a walkable trail. The Windrush Way will take you the 13 miles between those two towns. In the town of Winchcombe, you will find its famously narrow lanes, half-timbered homes, and stone cottages. We were staying in one of the brick cottages on one of those narrow lanes. Tarb Cottage is right off the high street, not more than 3 houses away from a public car park in one direction and a bakery and restaurants and shops in the other direction. Literally, you are in the heart of Winchcombe. Winchcombe offers lots to see and do, and you will find maps throughout the city to help guide you to the local attractions. The museum is just down the street from the cottage. Sudeley Castle is a bit of a walk, but it's scenic, and it will take you past the War Memorial, St. Peter's Church, and Vineyard Street. Let's get into a little bit of the history from this historic town. In 1880, Lord Sudeley planted the first seeds of what has become known as the Hales Fruit Farm. It involves a fruit farm, a farm shop, a tea room, a nature trail, fishing areas, and is a very diversified agricultural area that has managed to survive through the centuries because of the responsible ownership of the Harrell family, who have owned and operated it since the 1950s. This is absolutely worth a stop on your way into Winchcombe. We went in, picked up some local farm products to have while we were staying in Winchcombe, and it was a lovely way to make sure we were buying local and being a part of the culture of this cute village. In town, the high street is full of charming shops, cafes, that beautiful architecture that Jonathan mentioned, full of half timbers, beautiful antique shops, and a museum right in the center of the city. Stroll the high street for more of that fabulous architecture and some of the monuments, but you will end at St. Paul's Church, which is one of the town's treasures. We are in Winchcombe, and we came back because I really wanted Jonathan to see St. Peter's Church. I just think this is a stunning piece of the town, and I think if you don't see it, you're missing something.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And when was it built?
You're going to get to correct me. I know it was in the 1400s.
15th century, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, old church, and what's special about it is it's still in service. In fact, there's a service going on today. But even better than that, there's a few elements of this church that are really special. It is a perpendicular style church, and I believe it is the largest perpendicular church. Is that correct?
Yeah, perpendicular Gothic.
Perpendicular Gothic
So it's
church.
Gothic style.
Yeah. And it has this incredible weather vane at the top. It's a rooster weather vane that was actually brought here on loan from Westminster Abbey, and they never gave it back. Westminster Abbey ended up getting a spire, and so they didn't need their weather vane back, and this shiny rooster is at the top of this church, and it just is absolutely, it's kind of the icing on the cake of the church.
Ooh.
Oh.
I would say it's definitely had some renovation because we just droned it and it looks fabulous.
Yeah. We can see some walls where we think there probably was an extension at one point in time that wasn't rebuilt.
Yeah, I mean, a small one. I think it was just, maybe for the vestments or something. Probably when this was built, 1400s, probably built as a Catholic church. And at some point, like just about all the churches in England, became the Church of England after Henry VIII, established the Church of England and kind of ended the power, if you will, of the Catholic Church.
On the interior of this church, they have some fabric that was apparently woven by Henry VIII's first wife.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know her name? Is it Catherine of Aragon?
No, I don't think that was his first wife, but it could have been.
For 1,000 years, these decorative panels were commissioned saints and benefactors significant to Winchcombe, and that included Saints Mary, John, Catherine, and Benedict, and people like King Canulf and Lord Sudeley. After the Reformation, the panels were used as a border on the communion table, meaning they were laying on their side so that the figures weren't revered. Legend has held that the cloth was attributed to Catherine of Aragon, but that is a mistake. And the cloths have since been preserved in Sudeley Castle in the early 1900s, and since 1929 they were reassembled and are on display at St. Peter's Church.
This area, not surprisingly, there are a lot of sheep here, and wool was a huge sort of one of their products here, and a lot of the wealth of this town was built around the wool trade.
Yeah, there's also in Winchcombe is also Hales Abbey, which is actually on the site now of Sudeley Castle, and Hales Abbey, that's part of how those monks were making their money, was the wool trade.
Yeah, all right.
I don't think Hales Abbey survived Henry VIII. From the high street, you'll turn onto Vineyard Avenue, which has an incredible story all its own. This is Vineyard Street. And indeed, there were vineyards here, but its old name used to be Duck Street, because this is where they had a ducking station down by the river Isbourne. And this is where they would test witches to see if indeed they were witches. They would drown them in the river. If they lived, it was proof that they were a witch, and they were then put to death. If they didn't survive, they were presumed innocent. But if you go down Vineyard Street, cross the river, and continue on, you will hit Sudeley Castle. And Sudeley Castle today is the only private castle in England that actually has a queen buried within its grounds. And Queen Catherine Parr is a really special queen. She was the last surviving wife of King Henry VIII, and she lived and died at Sudeley. She was also the first queen to have her own works published. In fact, you can see her works that were published in one of the exhibits. After the Civil War, Cromwell slighted Sudeley Castle, and it really became derelict for about 200 years. It was rescued by two wealthy brothers, the Dent brothers, who were glove makers from Worcester. They took it over, and their nephew, John Coucher Dent, inherited the castle in 1855. But it really wasn't until his wife, Emma Brocklehurst, threw herself into the renovation and restoration of the castle and the gardens. She had very strong links to the town of Winchcombe, and you will see that Brocklehurst name again later in this video. As I mentioned, Sudeley Castle is privately owned by Elizabeth, Lady Ashcombe, her son, daughter, and their families, and they are committed to trying to preserve the castle, keep the treasures and the exhibitions, and continue some ongoing restoration and the regeneration of the gardens. So it is a place alive with history, but still growing into the future. The Sudeley Castle and grounds are open from March until November, so during the nice weather months, essentially. Admission is $10 per child and $23 for each adult. You can get family tickets if you're going as a group. That would be a little better deal for you. Family includes 2 adults, 3 children, and that's going to be £58. And you don't get a discount if you have English Heritage or any of those, because this isn't a public program. It's not one of the ones that is owned by one of those other societies. But there's an awful lot to do here. So you can go into the castle. There are public rooms that you'll get to go in and see. There are exhibits. There are 10 different gardens. You can go into the dungeon. There is an old relic of a tithe barn. There's an awful lot of history, but there are also cafes and children's play areas. You could easily spend a day at Sudeley. And if the weather gets bad, do the indoor things. And if the weather's really nice, make sure and do the garden things. But there's everything here, from a giant hedgehog to an animal ark. And if you are looking to find Catherine Parr, her body is entombed in St. Mary's Church, which is on the ground. And as I mentioned, the Adventure Playground has a phenomenal fort, probably the best fort your kids will ever want to play in. There's even a zip wire and swings. And there's an animal trail with life-sized elephant, that giant hedgehog that I mentioned, and other wildlife sculptures throughout the castle gardens. Just outside of town, past Sudeley Castle, along the Cotswold Way to Brockhampton, you will find a sign with an arrow towards Belas Knapp. Belas Knapp is a trapezoidal long barrow which was used as burial chamber dating back to about 3000 BC. It was used for successive burials over a period of years, including during Roman times, at which point we know it was opened because Roman pottery has been found in there. It was excavated in the 1800s when 31 bodies were discovered, and again in the early 1900s, at which time it was restored to what you see today. The mound is considered to be one of the best preserved Neolithic burial sites in the area. It is unique in that it has side doors, which are the actual entrances to the mound. The front of it is a false front. That is not actually an entrance and never has been. There isn't a good reason for it, although there's some speculation that it may have been considered a spirit doorway, not necessarily to keep robbers out because they never found any valuables buried with the bodies. There is a parking area, but it isn't big. There's not room for about more than a car just pulled off the side of the road. In order to get to the mound, you need to take about a 1 mile hike. It's a little bit steep, but it's doable. To make the hike, you would just park on the lay-by near the sign and then follow the footpath up through the wooded area to the top of the hill. It is steep and the footpath is visible, but it isn't paved or set in stones, anything like that. It truly is just a footpath. But it is open year-round and is free to access and available during daylight hours. I earlier mentioned the name Brockhampton, and let's come back to that because just a few miles outside of Winchcombe, just past Sudeley Castle, is Brockhampton Park, the estate that anchors Brockhampton Village. Brockhampton Park has this really storied and sometimes scandalous history, multiple owners over time with lots of legal lawsuits and fighting between different heirs to have ownership of the property, and some great times of growth as the property was developed by different owners. But currently today, it is a building that houses 21 different flats and still has all of that history and the beauty of that estate. Still sits on the gardens that were developed and is managed by a voluntary homeowners association. And there may still be a few of the white deer that escaped from the herd that used to live here in the 1950s.
So our shout out for this video goes to the Eskins family, to Jody, to Gary and Garrett.
And Mom.
And Mom. Mom, we send greetings from England, and you're in our thoughts every day.
Every day.
And we appreciate the time we've spent with each of you, and send our blessings. And Jody, especially, we wish you were here.
Yeah.
I know you're here in spirit.
And Garrett, we know you just played Texas Music Cafe, and kind of kills me that I wasn't at that show. But I think your dad took my place this time. So right on, Gary.
Yeah. We saw some of the pictures and video. And
well
it
played.
Looks like you guys nailed it. So very proud of you.
And Marshall, how about that haircut?
Yeah. Hardly recognizable.
I know, it's like a short-haired band now.
Yeah.
It is. It is a short-haired band now. It'll grow back.
Led by Joey, I would say.
Yeah, well, shortest hair of all goes to Joey.
Yeah. Anyway.
Most done do goes to Nestor.
Yeah. He's looking good. All right. Coming at you.
Okay. I guess I'm supposed to say something.